Hi, and welcome to the Health Begins with Mom show. I am Dorit Palvanov, your host. On this podcast, I will share insights and interviews on health, parenting, and explore the question of what does it take to thrive as women, wives, and mothers. Now, let's get going with today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Health Begins with Mom podcast. This is Dorit Palvanov, your host. And today I'm joined by my little baby, Naomi, who is a little sick, feeling under the weather, and she's joining mommy in recording, right? The show must go on. And so she's, I know, sweetie. So she's joining me today. So, by the way, today is the 14th of February, so it's Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's to those who are celebrating. If you listen to this show, you are a woman. You might be a wife, you might be a mother. Regardless, in order to thrive in your life, you will have to master being in connection and relationship with other human beings. This is just a fact of life. As human beings, and especially as women, we are wired for connection. There is a lot of healing in connecting with another human being, especially in connection with another woman. So we are wired for conversation, communication, and relating to other beings. One of the most significant relationships you will ever have is your relationship with your spouse or partner. For most of us, the beginning is usually great. You know, it's exciting and it's sparkled with confetti and pink candy. And then, over time, things basically go downward from there. In my work with women, I often hear complaints such as, he's not the man I married, or there were so many promises that didn't actualize, or we're growing apart. And my favorite is, we live like roommates, we have nothing to talk about other than the house logistics and the kids, to which I can totally relate. So what do we do? What can we do to keep the love alive? So to help you make a little bit more sense of what's going on, today on the show, I'm chatting with Tal Shaish, who is a personal coach, mentor, and the author of the book, The 12 Keys to Finding Love in Less Than 300 Dates. In her work, she is training people to better interpersonal communication, leading them to breakthroughs in their personal and romantic lives. With many, many years of being a single woman, endless relationships and dates under her belt, Tal brings a unique outlook on the world of older singles and on interpersonal communication between couples. So here's what we cover on the show today. Tal is going to share her personal 300 dates story. We also talk about why do relationships lose their spark and excitement over time? What can we do in order to strengthen our relationships and make them last long term? Why it's important to let the father play an active role in raising our children? And why shouldn't we be fighting in front of our kids? And also we talk about the importance of nourishing yourself within the, quote, confinement of a relationship. And also, Tal shares her new model of relationships. I think you're going to love the show, especially since it's going live on Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's. And I hope you listen to this podcast interview and implement some of the tips that Tal shares. I would love to know what are your takeaways from this episode. And I want to know your feedback because this is how I learn about your interests so I can keep producing content that you care about and find interesting. So feel free to reach out to me with your takeaways. You can email me at dorit@healthbeginswithmom.com. All right, so without further ado, here's my interview with Tal. Hi, Tal. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for this warm introduction. It's really great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I know you have two 8-year-old twins, right? A boy and a girl. So before we dive into talking about relationships, can you share with us what are you loving about being a mother right now?
Oh, wow. Being a mother. Well, actually, this age, they're 8.5 ish. There's a boy and a girl. Now my daughter is she has high functioning autism, and well, I see how she struggled at the beginning and how is she flourishing right now. And it's amazing. They both go to a special school, a private school, which is a very inclusive school, and which they have a very an individual curriculum and how they learn to communicate better and how to learn how the social cues and also, of course, they're really ahead with the curriculum. And I love to see how every day I find something new with them, and that's amazing.
That's great. Yeah, I think with just raising a human being and seeing how they develop, there is really newness every single day. Of course, if you're open to seeing that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we dive deeper, I know you have a fascinating personal story, sort of like your dark night of the soul moment, where everything in your life shifted from that moment onwards. So do you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, for sure. So I want to go back. I'm 40 now. Yes, I discover my age. But and when I was 28, I was standing in front of an apartment, what used to be our apartment, me and my ex-boyfriend, which I thought was the love of my life. And I was sure we're going to get married and have beautiful kids and so on. But at that moment, he told me, no, I'm not going to marry you. And I was devastated. For lots of time afterwards, I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even breathe. I don't know how I lived there. But and as a person that deals with relationships all the time, I was sure that it would be very easy for me to find love. And boy, was I wrong. And for 4 years, I was dating and dating more than 300 dates. I wrote a book about it, more than 300 dates. But as a woman, you can't really say that you dated more than 300 dates, right? So, but only when I figured out that until I learned to love myself, like Madonna has this say that says, until you learn to love yourself, I was never, ever loving anybody else. And the moment that happened, that I nurtured and nourished myself and I learned to love myself, everything changed. Because like a month later, I met somebody, and 2 weeks after, he told me he wants me to be the mother of his kids, of our kids. And a month and a half later, I had an engagement ring on my finger. A week later, I discovered I'm pregnant, and a week later, I discovered the twins. And now
it's amazing how everything, when it's right, it just flows so quickly, right?
It is. Now, Dorit, if I came to you and I told you, listen, I met a guy, but he just got divorced 2 weeks ago, and he's flying to London, Britain to learn his master's, and he is an actor. So would you would probably say, you know what, leave him alone.
That's not for me.
It's not for me. However, my intuition in this case were really, really right, because I was prepared. I was ripe for the relationship. I knew how to handle things, and I knew what I wanted. And I have the most wonderful, touch wood, husband. He's a great family guy and a great lover and a great partner to run with him the journey of life. And I wrote a book about it, as I mentioned before, because I really believe in shorten the way and the time that I see single people, men and women, struggling with finding the relationship that they truly deserve. And I think we can shorten this. And on the same note, I work with couples to help them have the relationship they truly deserve. Because when it comes to relationships, you can find so many different types of relationships, and nobody teaches us how to communicate. Nobody actually at school teaches us how to express our feelings. And it doesn't matter if you went to school in Canada or any other place. You can either learn how to oppress those feelings and put them inside and not actually talk and discuss them. Or what you can do is just to shove it in somebody else's face. But you don't have the middle range, the range in the middle that says, let's communicate. Let's say things in a language that I can share how I feel without putting the blame on you. And this is something that I teach most of my couples that work with me how to do, so they can have better relationship.
Right. And again, guys, so the book is called The 12 Keys to Finding Love in Less Than 300 Dates. I love the number. And I'll link up to that in the show notes below. Okay, so in my community, we have people from different relationship styles. So some of them are married, some of them are single parenting, others are in partnerships, etc., etc. Most of us, however, are in some kind of relationship. But I know for many of us, relationships are really tough. And you mentioned that earlier. And it's really hard to keep the spark alive long term, especially when children enter the picture. And I think most of us, for most of us, relationships begin with sunshines and confettis, which is the result of happy hormones released in the brain. We all like newness and sparkles, but why don't relationships last? Why do they crumble, even when in the beginning it seems good? What's happening there?
Well, that's a great question. The thing is that I have to be honest, relationships are messy. It's like you want to bake a bread, so you have to put your fingers inside the flour and the egg and the salt and the sugar and the water and it's sticky, and sometimes it doesn't rise, right? But you have to keep working on that and put the yeast inside and put it in a warm place and nourish it and wait until it does. And people sometimes don't have patience to do that. This is one thing. And the other thing is that we were brought up in, like, I look at my parents and my grandparents, and they come from a generation that relationships are sacrificing yourself, not putting yourself out there. So I see two kinds of couples. I see couples that either are very selfish and are not willing to struggle and to actually work or be engaged in the relationship, and they growing apart. They just grow apart in their relationships. Everybody go to their own direction. Or what they're doing is that, on the other hand, that there's so much sacrifice inside the relationship that they become sort of, there is a symbiosis. There is like, but in a bad way, that they are having actually a sort of a one unit and not knowing who is who and when do I start and where do I end. So the main important thing is to find out where you start, where you begin, where you end, when you have time to nourish yourself. And when you come like this to the relationship, you're more likely to be able to actually support your partner and be there for the other side. And the most important thing that I learned, because listen, couples that have twins are more likely to get divorced. Statistically, couples who have kids with special needs are more likely to get divorced. Couples that are having child before their due date are more, and have them in prenatal and incubators and stuff, are more likely to get divorced. Statistically, I'm talking. Okay, and I survived for 9 years now, all those three. And why? Because we managed to look at the challenges together. It's not me against you. It's together against the challenges, or working with the challenge. And that's very important, because I see couples turn against each other instead of towards each other, and they're not communicating in a way that can help together to join their forces and actually work. And that's a shame. I see that a lot, and that's a shame.
Right. And I think, well, at least looking at my parents and the way, we were brought up, it's a lot of, and you mentioned that before, there's this mentality of like, yes, it is hard. Like, we understand it's going to be hard, but suck it up and keep pushing. Mm-hmm. And then, like you mentioned, there is this growing apart. And then I think when we become parents, it becomes all about the kids. I remember, like, even for my husband and I, and we do understand the importance of, date nights and spending time together. But when I think about it, like, most of our conversations would be about the kids. And that, I think, sort of like corrodes the relationship. Do you agree?
I agree and disagree. So I see it in two different ways, because there are challenges, and in life there are always challenges. I saw some statistics and some interesting researchers studies that are talking about the drop down of the happiness once you have kids. So you're very happy, and you're very, very happy when you're pregnant, and once you're pregnant, and waiting and anticipating for the kids, and then boom, you have a kid, and then for 2 or 3 years, and then you have another kid. and your sleepless nights and the efforts and the money issues and and the mother-in-law or the father-in-law that are being intervening with the kids' education and being brought up. So it's all very stressful and people are less happy. So first of all, we have to remember that it's something temporary. I mean, our kids will grow up eventually, right? So this is very important to remember, that it's a year, that it's 2 years, and maybe a little bit more, but take it into consideration that this is time to be so tired. My cousin just gave birth 2 weeks ago, and she was like, how did you do it with twins? We're so tired. And I'm like, welcome to the club. You're gonna have a bundle of anxiety and a bundle of guilt, and this is what you get when you become a parent. And we as a society don't talk about it so much. But first of all, it's a fact that happens. Now we have to deal with it. So the question is, how can we deal with it in a way that will nourish and nurture our relationship and support? And so one of the things is, yes, let the father take a role and discuss it with your partner. Let the father have a very active role in raising the child. It's very, very important, because many of us, and I'm talking as a woman myself, we don't let them, the way they bathe it, or the good night routine, or it's not exactly the way we wanted it to be. So what? Deal with it. If your husband steps in, you should encourage him, or I invite you to encourage him or her to step in and be involved in the child raise, and to take them to classes, and if there is mailing list from school or parties. And I see more and more fathers that are getting involved, and that's very, very blessed thing, because when they have their father involved, you get children with much more self-esteem and self-confidence, and it's very, very important. That's one. So take your anxiety and take your fear that it's not going to be perfect, and let the father handle some of the stuff, and share, collaborate, do things collaboratively. If you have problems, don't fight in front of the kids. Another thing is, yes, this old advice of taking the date night. Yes. Now, what do? Now, you already mentioned it, that if you go to a date night, then you talk about the kids. So no, not talking about the kids anymore. So what are we talking about? So this is my maybe first advice to you. Download the Gottman card app. Gottman, Gottman. I repeat, Gottman. And there are cards, cue cards, that can help you A, spice up your sex life, and B, have topics for conversation. Because all of a sudden it's like, so what should we talk about? What do we have besides our work and besides our kids? And yes, every Saturday when we have our noon nap, because our kids can be with a tablet for an hour, nothing will happen to them. So we go and get into bed, me and my husband, and we ask each other questions, and it's very, very conversation provoking questions, like, what are your goals now? And who is your best friends now? And what is your biggest fear currently? And what would you like to do this year? And where would you like to go on vacation? And stuff like that can really bring up a conversation that is lost in the hustle and bustle of everything.
That's amazing. Can you also talk about screen time? Because I know a lot of listeners, and myself included, when we're in relationship with men, I see this happening. Like, I see this coming up again and again in my coaching with my clients. They complain about their husbands being really glued to the screen, either their phone, like you mentioned that, the iPad, the computer. And so I wanted you to mention that also. What can we do as women to, as their partners, to make them want to engage with us as opposed to favoring the screen?
Okay, so it's a very good question. It raises a lot also in my practice, and I want to give it two different ways to approach it. One way is the fact that screens and technology is one of the 7 principles that prevents us from being married and happily married. And I'm not talking just from my experience. I'm talking from the Gottman Institute experience, which I had the privilege to be trained by for several courses. And one of the most amazing thing is that as much as the technology goes on and evolve, we are more glued to the screens, and our kids are more glued to the screen. And by the way, women also get glued to the screen.
Right.
And one of the things that is very important is to define when is a good time to be glued to the screen and when is not, together, not to dictate it, not to tell it to the other partner. Like, for example, we're having a family dinner, so there are no screens or no telephones or no tablets. And I know that I'm a very busy woman. I teach six courses in 2 colleges, and I have my practice, and I have another business clients coming in. And still, when we're having supper with the kids and with the husband, or if we're having like a romantic dinner, a takeaway after the kids are going to sleep, we're not sitting with our tablets or whatever, no technology. The second thing is, as Simon Sinek likes to say, just get an alarm clock and put the phones away, charge them in the living room. Nothing bad will happen. Trust me, nothing will happen if you don't like this post on Facebook. That's one thing. The other thing that you raises here is very important. Is how do I get my partner to be interested in me, regardless the screens?
Right.
And this is something that is a very, very important, because us as women, we have this tendency. First of all, we're multitaskers. We're like bazillion stuff at the same time, making homeworks, cooking supper, answering the phone, cleaning, vacuuming the rice from last night, setting the tables,
building a business.
That's for sure. But I'm talking about at the same, very, very, very same time. And that's hard. And we have this tendency of taking all of our energy and just spreading it around instead of keeping it a little bit of it inside. And when I have this twice a week or 3 times a week, when I go to do my hobbies, whether it's like acting in front of a camera or read or go to do my yoga or just meeting a friend, I am nurturing myself. And when I'm in a position like this, I am more sexy. I am more attractive. You can try it with your kids. Like you know this with kids. Like if I can be around them all day, they wouldn't take a look at me. The moment the phone rings and somebody on the phone, Mom, Mommy, I need this. Can I do that? So it's the same with our partners. Go back to something that is real, that we take the focus onto ourselves. Go meditate. And I highly recommend having a journal. Write down your journal and take some moments that are just to yourself, you and a nice cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whiskey. I don't know what your favorite cup, right? But take those moments to yourself and connect to your center. And only then you'll be able, A, to be a better mom, B, to give more, and C, to be much more attractive. So we're talking about the side of defining and agreeing together about the screen times, and B, getting back to what actually nurtures me. Right. And I have TV at home, but I don't watch it. And everybody's like, how can you not watch this series or this series? I don't
have time.
It's not about the time. It's about I don't want to spend 3 hours, and I don't judge anybody by doing this. It's great if you want to do it. Keep on, by all means, okay? Sometimes you just need something to clean your head, your mind. But I'd rather read a good book or do something that has to do with my business, or spend some time with my husband, or tickle my kids in bed. I don't know, something like that, instead of spending another hour in front of TV. But I'm not saying it in a judgmental way, right? It's our prioritize. Right. And now when we're so overwhelmed and flooded with all the opportunities, it's time to take a deep breath and get back to our center.
Right. I love that you're mentioning it, because in my coaching calls, I do coaching with moms, with women, and we talk about this idea of thriving. And it's really hard to thrive when you have so many responsibilities, especially when you're raising kids, it becomes all about them, right? It's their school supplies, it's their clothes, it's their play dates. It's all about them. And then eventually you sort of like forget about yourself. And I remember for myself, there was a time when I would look in the mirror and I would like say, who are you? Like, I don't remember you anymore. And it was that was my dark night of the soul moment when I realized, if I don't, and by the way, like you said, I didn't feel like I'm a good mom, even though I've dedicated myself to motherhood. I have a full bookshelf full with books about parenting and motherhood and relationship, and yet I still did not feel like I'm a good mom. And so I think what you're bringing up here is this idea of finding pleasure as a woman. And it's really allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to go on that journey of self-discovery, finding out what nourishes me, like what gives me pleasure. And I have to mention this book. This is a book I'm reading right now. It's called, this podcast is not explicit, but I guess I can use that word. It's called Pussy by Regina Thomashauer. Have you heard about her?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this book. My husband would find me hiding in the bedroom and just, wanting to retreat and read more and more. And, if that kind of book is not your style, I would say even reading like, a good romance, which is porn for women, just something that invigorates you, that, like you said, gives you pleasure, right?
Yeah, totally. And remember that there are times that your immediate pleasure, you won't be seeing it. Your life changed, you have kids now. But the question is, are you becoming a victim to this? Or are you understanding that, okay, in the next few months, it's going to be hectic, so I won't have time to do twice a week what I want, so we'll do it once a week. And that's okay, because it's for the next few months. And not getting so, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? I'm losing myself. And I just take a deep breath. Sometimes we have more time when the kids are a bit growing up to have more time for ourselves and to have this time, like you say, reading in bed and totally, relate to ourselves and nourish ourselves. And sometimes we're in a survival mode and we have to run from one place to another. But the main question is, I don't want to be the perfect mom. I want to be the good enough mother. I want to be a good enough mother. I want my kids to see also mommy having played it with her friends and having guests over. And they want to see mother that works and fulfilling herself. That's also what I want to be. And mother that has her own money. And a mother that's my role model that I want to bring for the kids. And it's okay for each and every one and each and every mom to have her own. Like if one is like, I want to have 6 kids and be a stay-at-home mom to nurture my kids this way, it's perfectly fine. It's great. I love it. If that's what you really do and you don't come out of a sort of a victimized place that like, oh, this is my life, I don't know what to do. This is our life, but the question is what kind of choices we're making within the circumstances. So the way we're getting back to the center and remember what we are deciding, what's our goals, what is the vision that leads us, we're fine. We're fine.
So what I hear you saying is basically honor this phase of your life right now that you're currently at.
Sure.
And I love how you said embracing good enoughness and not striving for perfection, because, oh gosh, we women, and I see this, I have 3 girls. And I see this. I have an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and a baby. And my 8-year-old is already starting to, with her school or with her friends, I see how she's being caught up in this, not good enough, or I want to be perfect. Or even the teenage girls that I work with, it's constantly repeating, I didn't do enough. I didn't, I wasn't enough. And yeah, definitely it's embracing the fact that, your good enoughness. And yeah, I love that. Thank you for mentioning it. I want to talk about this In your book, you mentioned this new model of relationship. Can you talk about what do you mean by that?
Okay. Well, as I started mentioning before, we're not. It's not good enough for us. Talking about good enough, it's not good enough for us to have the relationships that our parents and grandparents have before, when just one side was involved in the household, and just one was involved with the money. And we also don't want to be two people that are out of the house all the time and not being able to be with our kids anymore. And one of the most important thing is to see ourselves and to bring ourselves fully to the relationship, to bring our hopes and dreams, and to create a shared system that can support both of our dreams and both of our needs and wants. Because thank God we're not in a position of just surviving. We're talking about thriving, and a good relationships and being happy is that I can support my husband's dreams and that he can support mine. And there are so many ways of showing love and presenting love. And one of the things that I love that my husband, well, he's a native English speaker and I'm not, and he goes over my stuff and he makes sure that I don't have mistakes. And this is love for me. This is love. This is like taking away from your precious time that you can be spending with friends or engaging with your sports and helping me. Now, the thing is that if we look at a relationship like a nice sandbox, and we understand that we are there to play, it's a game of life. We're here to play and enjoy this time, and it's a give and take, and it's not about life and death, and it's not about, like, take out all this heroic stuff and all this dramatic stuff and just collaborate, communicate, just be together. And another thing is what I call the STEPS method. Like, for example, I really wanted to do my master's, and we already had 3 years old kids back then. And he said, okay, I'm supporting you with doing my master's. And after that, I wanted to learn more about relationships. So my husband supported me financially. He was working, and he was more with the kids in this 2 years of me studying. And after that, we moved to Canada, and he really wanted to open his own business here. So I took upon myself to work in several different jobs at the first year in order to support him for his dream until he reached a position that he could support us. Specifically in this, this enterprise did not skyrocket, and we decided that we're changing together. We're tuning up this meeting with the partner to tune up every now and then to make sure that our goals are met, that our needs are met, that our wants are met. Is very important to keep communicating all the time. And then we discovered that it's not what we really thought it would be. So he found another job, a great job, and I'm doing now. I'm starting my practice, right? So that's what I've been doing in Canada for the past 2 years, and he's supporting me with this. So actually, like, one side is taking the steps, and then when it reaches to a point, it can pull a hand and pull the hand, reach out a hand and pull the other partner to his step, and that's so on and so forth. In this way, you don't feel like you're left behind, that for years you stayed at home because you didn't want to, or because of, or you had to go to work that you don't like. You found out a way how to do that. And this is what's important, the communication and the ability to work on your dreams together.
Right. So I love that you mentioned that it's about collaboration, it's about communication, and then being flexible enough and allowing yourself to course correct, because that's life, and you have to you have to be flexible, because if you are rigid, then you are inflicting suffering upon yourself and upon your spouse and your family. So yeah, thank you. I love that. Okay, Tal, so I have a few questions that I ask all of my guests.
Please.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I was born ready. I told you.
Okay, good. So the show is all about inspiring mothers to thrive as women, wives, and mothers. And I like calling it being a goddess in your life. So I'm curious to know, how are you being a goddess in your own life? How do you take care of yourself, your soul, your body? What are some of your non-negotiables?
My non-negotiable is a good night's sleep. A good night's sleep, great mattress. I don't negotiate on that. And I do not negotiate the dates that I have, the dates that I have with my husband, the time that is dedicated. This is what I non-negotiable.
I love that. I have to ask you, because I know people, if I'm thinking this, for sure listeners are questioning this as well. What do you do with babysitting? Like, how do you coordinate that?
Oh, well, first of all, I have a pool of babysitters, and I bring some. I bring people to my house. My house is very open. I have people coming and going all the time, friends and family friends and friends of the kids. Now, the thing is that I don't have a family here. I have a very extended family, like from cousins of cousins of cousins and friends of my husband's family, because I wasn't born here and I just came 2.5 years ago. Anyway, so we started by getting them and letting them play in like play dates with the kids, and then I see how they play, and then I try to keep them coming, and they love the kids, and the kids are nice, and if they're younger, then I drive them back home. And yes, I'm like, you have to let go in a sort of a phase. You have to let go, otherwise it's very hard.
I love that, having a pool of babysitters. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, what advice does your now mommy self would have given to your pre-mommy self?
Oh, take a deep breath. You're awesome. That's the biggest advice.
Yeah, thank you. I like to keep it real and show listeners that even though someone is an expert in one area, they might be struggling with other things. So what are some of your current challenges as a woman, wife, or mother?
Wow, my current challenges. First of all, my house is not tidy. Never tidy, and the piles of laundry never end. The other thing is, I all the time struggle, and the way we're like what we were talking about, we have to understand that even if I'm an expert, it doesn't mean that I don't have the same challenges. It's all about the point of view. But the challenges is about the balance between work and family. And for me, relationships is less of a problem because this is my expertise, and I do have time with my husband, a great time with my husband. But sometimes I work on Sundays, sometimes I work on Saturdays, sometimes I have my practices opening until sometimes 9 or 10 o'clock. So sometimes I miss their bedtime. So the balance is always an issue, always.
Tal, any last advice for new moms?
Take a deep breath and love yourself, love your husband, keep your partners included, and
embrace the enoughness, the good enoughness.
Embrace the enoughness, for sure.
Great. Thank you so much. It has been so insightful. Before I let you go, can you tell where can people find you, your website, your social media handles, all of that?
Sure. So my name is Tal Shaish, and my website is Empower Couple, and then Power Couple, because I believe that a power couple is not enough. You have to empower them, but it's just the M. And you can find me an Empower Couple on Facebook, and you can reach out to me. I'm having workshops, and I work with couples, I work with singles, and you can find my book on Amazon. I'm sure you're going to put this in the comments below. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So as you mentioned, I'll have all the links attached below. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the great work that you do. I just want to personally say, and I say this to all my guests, thank you so much for being courageous and stepping into your truth. Because if you're not true to yourself, you cannot mother from love. And I think it's so important that we are stepping into this. Thank you so much, Dad.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Health Begins with Mom show. I love hearing from you, so please post your comments and questions over at healthbeginswithmom.com/podcast. If you love the show, please share it on social media and in your real life with other moms who might enjoy this content. And if you have a burning question or topic you'd like me to hit on the show, just drop me a line at dorit@healthbeginswithmom.com. And if you love this show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review, and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Much love and many blessings.